Hi guys, Mike here and welcome to another video on the channel. Me and Megs have been on vacation for a couple of weeks back in the UK with family and friends, just taking a break, and we're back in Sweden now. And I came out today with a load of camera gear as I'm looking to upgrade some of my kit and I've got a few things to test out. And I thought I'd do a video on camera equipment. I've been running my YouTube channel now since 2011 and it's often a question I've been asked, like, what kind of gear do you use when you're out in the woods? How do you film this and what settings do you use? And I thought I'd make a video exactly about that. I've brought all my gear with me today, including some new stuff I'm just testing out that's on loan to me. I thought I'd just show you everything I use and how I use it and the settings I use. And if you're looking to start a channel and you're umming and ahhing about camera gear, this isn't going to be an all-in guide for you because I just don't possess the knowledge to be able to do that. I can only really shed to you some light on the equipment I use and how I found it over the years, and predominantly, just to dispel any kind of expectations, what I've been using for the last, crikey, 7 or 8 years is really GoPros, and that's not because I'm affiliated with GoPro in any way whatsoever. It's just the road I went down very early on because I needed certain requirements for my camera equipment, and it just fit the bill at the time, and I just kind of carried on walking that road using GoPros. And there are pros and cons to that, and I'll be totally honest with you in this video. Back in the early days when I hadn't started my channel yet, a friend of mine at work was selling a camera, and it had fixed memory and a fixed battery, and it filmed in 720p, and I bought it from him, and thus began the beginning of a YouTube channel. And I started filming with it, and I was having quite a lot of fun with it actually. And it was Megan at the time, who I just really met right at the beginning of when I started the channel back in 2011, who said to me, "Oh, you should start a YouTube channel." And I really got into it then and started kind of going out and filming my adventures. But there's a lot of limitations on a camera with fixed memory card and fixed battery. It really limits the length of time you can spend outdoors. And I quickly moved on from that camera and I bought myself a GoPro Hero 2. And at the time it was a great camera. The brilliant thing about it was you could change the memory cards and the batteries, so I ended up having about 5 or 6 memory cards and probably 10 or 11 batteries, so it allowed me to go out and film much longer videos, and I was out doing my solo bushcraft style video. But one of the limitations of that camera were really bad fisheye, which you could get rid of if you were very good at editing, which I really wasn't at the time. I just didn't have very good editing software back then. And also it could take external audio, but unless you had a microphone that allowed you to amp up the actual decibels of the microphone to like plus 20 decibels, you'd hear all this weird kind of audio gain noise coming from the GoPro. I mean, there'll be guys out there who are much more savvy with the tech than I am. You could probably explain to me in the description what all this is, but you know, I'm just kind of talking in layman's terms from someone who just uses the gear. But it produced pretty good visuals and I was pretty happy with it, and the audio was good enough and nobody really complained too much in the comments about the audio, so I stuck with that setup for a number of years. And then I kind of continued down the GoPro line and ended up with something like this, not with this setup, but with this camera. And this isn't what I currently use, but this is the last camera I used, and this is a GoPro Hero 3 Plus Black. And I was really blown away at the drastic jump from the Hero 2 to the Hero 3. And I have to say this again, I have no affiliation to GoPro, just somebody who used them and liked them, and you know, I could have made better choices, but I didn't. Sometimes it's better the devil you know, and people are reluctant to change, and I was. But I was really happy with how the camera moved along. I mean, you could film in 2.7K and 4K with much higher frame rates. Again, you had removable batteries and SD, and I have a screen on the back of mine that I could click into place, so I actually had a viewfinder to set up shots. You know, the composition of the shot is obviously very important, you know, the rule of 3, and get good lighting and everything, and work out what I was doing. So this was pretty good, but it had an inherent flaw, and that flaw was the external audio port, which is basically like a mini USB port. And I was using this camera for about 2 years, and I was on my 5-day solo bushcraft video, and I remember it really well. It was a scene where I was on the beach and I was looking out at sea, you know, with the gun on my shoulder, and my camera fell over on the tripod. It just took a hit like this, and because you have a connector coming out of that to your microphone, to an adapter, then to your microphone, it smashed in the USB port. And I didn't realise it at the time, but I only had audio very intermittently after that in that video, and I managed to rescue it a little bit, but after that video the audio was completely gone and this camera just wouldn't work with external audio anymore. And the audio on GoPros, to tell you the truth, is terrible. So that's really why, if you're going to use these cameras, you really should use external audio to get better audio, or an external audio recorder, which is what I'm using now, but I'll show you that in a little while. So, thinking I just had bad luck, and my wife Megan, working at Cotswold Outdoor at the time, and she had 50% off, I thought I'll get another one, which is this one here. And after about a few years of using it, pulling the audio plug in and out, because you know you want to pack the camera away or you're travelling or whatever, you know, it died again. Basically, if you took like a pin or an awl and you wiggled what was in that port there, basically you'd see it wobbling around everywhere, and I have no external audio on this. And from looking online and checking forums, it seems that a lot of people have that problem, and yeah, it's just not something I think GoPro tested properly. You know, they probably rolled the camera out too fast, a lot of these companies do, and yeah, and I was one of the people to experience that twice. And yeah, I'd never buy that camera again. Now this camera is a backup camera. I use it for underwater shots when I'm ice fishing, for example, in the winter. It's useful for going under the ice and giving perspective, and under the ice is a lot warmer than above the ice in the winter, so that's good. And it's also useful for this magnet mount, so I can stick it underneath my Jeep for my other channel. If I'm doing off-roading videos, I want to give perspective, I want to show the kind of rocks I'm crawling over and the obstacles I'm tackling. It just gives a bit of dynamic on moving around if you have a metal object. It's also kind of useful for snowmobiles. If you have something metal, you can bang it on the snow scooter, zip along in the wilderness, kind of show some perspective on that. And it's just a B-roll camera now that is not responsible for any audio whatsoever. But being the kind of guy I am, I thought, yeah, I will go with a GoPro again. And the reason being, you look at my videos I do, I can't sit at home in front of a computer and talk about video games on my channel. I'm out in the wilderness. I need something that can repel water or be waterproof to a degree from rain. It needs to be light, so it's not adding so much extra weight to my already heavy kit. With this setup, I can keep things very light and also cleverly capture decent shots. But I moved on to the GoPro Hero 5, which is what I'm recording myself on now. And the GoPro Hero 5 Black is a pretty decent GoPro. I'm happy to say it doesn't suffer with the same problem that the Hero 3 has with the audio port. They changed the audio port, and my GoPro Hero 5 Black has fallen on that audio port loads of times with a plug-in, and it's still doing okay. Now I actually use an audio recorder for better audio quality, a H1 zoom, as you can see there. It does increase the length of time that it takes in the editing suite, but if you go like this or something before you start recording, it matches up the audio with the camera with the H1 zoom, and it's much easier to align everything when you're editing, and it just makes it very easy. And this is great for voiceovers too, because if you're recording indoors and you don't want the echo of a room, you can turn down the actual sensitivity of the microphone and put it really close to your mouth, and it will just pick up your voice and drown out everything else around it. So it's pretty useful and versatile for that as well. So there are some downsides to the GoPros. Yeah, I mean, it has obviously got better and better, but I think if you're going to film outdoor videos like me, yeah, GoPros are something you can use, but you have to understand that it can't do everything, and it's really the way you use the GoPro, and this is probably the most important part of the video if you are going to use GoPros. They have a setting called Pro Tune mode, and Pro Tune mode is the only setting I would ever use my GoPro on. I film on 2.7K at 60 frames per second in the summer with good light. In the winter I drop down to 2.7K on 30 frames per second because the GoPro is really rubbish, and this is another con that I forgot to mention, at dealing with low light. They're not good at all. This phone here, this Samsung S9, is better than in low light than the GoPro. But filming on 2.7K kind of gives you the ability to jump in and jump out. I believe they call it punching in and punching out, as I've learnt recently. And you can kind of zoom in the video editor and change the shot by keeping the camera in the same place, kind of like I'm doing on this video. You'll see me zoom in and zoom out a bit every now and then, and it's just to kind of mix the shot up and keep things interesting and dynamic. I'd also be overlaying old footage to make reference to what I'm talking about and pictures of my camera gear. You know, it's all about kind of keeping the video dynamic. When you have a limited setup like I have, you really have to do everything possible to make the video engaging for somebody. But the most important setting is Pro Tune mode, if I just go back to that. The thing about the GoPro is if you film with the GoPro on standard settings, it'll film everything really wide, so there'll be a bit of fisheye. It'll have really high contrast, it'll add in lots of sharpening, and it'll effectively white out the sky and darken to almost infinite blackness everything on the ground in a dark area, like the trees and stuff. And that's, I guess from memory, that's called dynamic range. So it has terrible dynamic range, and it basically just ruins the shot. I would never film on a GoPro in anything other than Pro Tune mode. Pro Tune mode films everything with flat colour. So the sky will be completely flat, the trees will be flat, the ground will be flat. It will balance out between dark and light and actually allow you to have something to use in the video editor that you can apply your own colour to, you can apply your own contrast to, and your own sharpening, and it won't do any of that for you. And that's the only setting I would recommend filming on GoPros. They actually released new software for the Hero 3 Plus Black where you can do that too, and that's what I use with this as well. And it really rescued this camera because I was struggling with it, filming with the GoPro, thinking, oh, it's just ruining all the shots there. You'll notice in a lot of my old footage, it's really, really high contrast and really sharpened with the GoPro doing all the work. And as I learned about what I was doing, I stopped letting it do that. And I put it in Pro Tune mode and I flattened everything out. I do my own sharpening, my own colour, my own contrast, you know, adjusting the RGB scale and making sure everything's correct. And that's why it takes me so long to do a video. That's kind of my experience of the camera gear I use and the GoPros I use. I use a Manfrotto tripod, an aluminium one. It's very lightweight. And prior to using the H1 zoom, I used a Rode VideoMic Pro. But in a recent fishing video I did, and I remember the scene very well, I was standing on some rocks fishing, I just caught a perch. You'll see the camera change from GoPro to Megan's camera to her SLR. And the reason being is this camera here I'm filming on now took a dive, I don't know how. Usually the dog knocks it, that's the main thing. And my Rode VideoMic Pro exploded into, it just atomized on the rocks as it's made of plastic. And that's no longer around anymore. And it's a real shame because there are some previous videos where I'm filming with that, and that's a shotgun mic, by the way. And you'd hear all the bird song in the forest, and it really did allow you to amplify the audio up to plus 20 decibels, and I could record myself really far away. But obviously the winter added a completely different element to literally to what I'm filming with. GoPros do not work below about -5. The H1 zoom doesn't work below about -4. All of this equipment I have and I'm using now is only working because it's about 17 or 18 degrees plus out here, C. In the winter, on average, it's about -20 degrees C. At the extremes, it's -35 degrees C, sometimes lower. I wouldn't be out filming in that temperature, but I do go out and film in -20 degrees C because that's kind of an average temperature. And you know, I want to keep my channel running, I want to keep making videos. There are interesting things happening like racing on the ice and scrap cars and me ice fishing and me and Meg camping, and I want to capture those things. And the winter here in Sweden is beautiful. I almost prefer it to the summer. It's really nice. I mean, this one's useless. It just switches off as soon as you switch it on again, you know. It's terrible. And this one here, I have to wrap tons of socks around it, and then maybe I get about half an hour from it. The H1 Zoom doesn't work at all, it switches off. The Rode VideoMic Pro works brilliantly, even as low as -35°C. Very impressed with that, and I will be buying another one, or maybe something a bit better. I'll upgrade, but I will go with Rode again because they're very good. So I'm kind of stuck. The winter's coming. Winter's coming. I'm not the king of the north, even though I'm trying to grow my hair. But alongside all of this equipment, I actually have a charging kit. And I'm going to show you that now because it's a relatively new piece of gear I have. I used to have an old battery bank that I used in the winter for my phones and for my camera gear and for all backing up my equipment, because you really need it in these cold temperatures. But I got this piece of equipment just recently, which is really good, and this operates below as low as -45°C. So hopefully this year I'll be able to keep my gear charged with a cable running to my cameras and everything, and just give it a bit of extra juice. But I'll show you that now. This is something that plays a much bigger role in the winter, but I still use it now as working outside and filming outside. It's really useful to have some backup power because running out of batteries is so common, especially in the winter. But I got this pack from Outex, and I turned it into kind of like an outdoor charging support kit for the Jeep and for my gear, and just kind of outdoor electrical stuff, mainly for the camera equipment. So what it came with was this battery bank here, which is much better than my old battery bank. Its capacity is 20,000 milliamp hours at 74 watts, and its waterproof level is IP67. So it's pretty tough really, and I've been using it for about, well, just over a month now, and I've been really happy with it. It has a couple of USB outputs there that have different specifications to them, and I'll put all the information and the link to it below if you're interested. And you have two inputs there. You can actually use both and charge it really quickly. And you have a solar panel on the back, which in fact I turned it over then, and you start to see the green light flash as it starts to charge basically. But it's a really cool bank, and it's got some weight to it obviously, which weight is always a factor. But yeah, really useful, and I can charge my GoPro batteries with it. I can have it hooked into the GoPro while I'm filming, so it's providing some power to it to stop it decharging too quickly or using the batteries too fast. So it's going to be a real help in the winter, and I'm kind of looking forward to testing it out. It also came with a solar charger kit as well, and that has a USB output, and you can basically use that to charge the battery bank. And I've used it to charge my mobile phone when I've been out camping. When I just took this with me actually when I went camping, and not this, and I was only out for a night and used this to sort of just charge the phone so I could stay in touch with Megan, which was cool. So it's a decent bit of kit, but you get like a charger with it, obviously for the wall, 2 USB outputs, variety of cables for it, and I've kind of added loads of my other stuff, so I can kind of plug it into my laptop. I can do like an iPhone, the iPad. I've got a USB hub, so you know you can plug multiple things into the bank, and obviously the charging is much slower, but it's just a useful bit of support kit really that just helps quite a lot for when you're outdoors and you might need to just apply some extra power. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on the kind of gear I use, and really I imagine some of you might not be too interested in this video, but those of you who have asked the questions over the years on the kind of gear I film with, and if you're interested in my channel specifically and my filming style, it might appeal to you. I don't really do anything too fancy with my filming. I sort of keep it to a standard that's high quality, but really my limitations are my computer at home, which isn't particularly fast, and it takes me a couple of weeks to usually produce one video. Well, just under a couple of weeks. I have this kind of gear here that you've seen. Obviously the weather's really extreme here in Sweden in the winter, so it makes it kind of tough to film if you're outdoors and it's cold and the equipment's dying. So let's hope that power bank works. I really hope it does. I'm going to rig something up and try and get a system together that can help me. But I don't have an aerial drone. You may have seen one on my last video. That was Expedition Jack's. That was his drone, and he let me use it, and we used the footage together. And I do intend on buying one, but they're really expensive, and I just don't really have the finances to prioritise a drone over other things at the moment, as we are still new to Sweden, and getting set up in a new country kind of costs a bit of money, and there are hurdles to cross really before you start coasting. But I do have something just down there that's kind of cool. I have a ROV, which is basically an underwater drone, that's on loan to me from a company I'm just testing out at the moment, and it produces some awesome 4K footage, and I'm still getting to grips with it. I've taken it out at night, and it's got like floodlights on the front, and it can go down as deep as 100 meters and out as far as the tether will take you. 500 meters I think is the max tether they have, and it's pretty cool. So it does largely depend on the water quality though. There's a lot of turbidity in these lakes and rivers low down here where I am in Sweden, but if you go high up into the mountains, in the fells and things, then the water gets really clear. So should be some interesting footage coming up with that kind of soon to enhance the videos. But yeah, I wouldn't mind an aerial drone. It does really add just a little bit to the video here and there to give people a kind of perspective of the environment. But yeah, if you're interested in any of the products I showed in this video though, obviously again I have no affiliation with GoPro, but if you want to check the links below, I'll put some links below, you can have a look. And obviously I have an Amazon shop, so you can check all the stuff I use out on there. I'll also put a link to this power bank, the Outex power bank. It'll be really interesting to see how it does in the winter, and I'm going to get something rigged up with that to give me a bit of support, so I can produce videos in the winter as easily as I can in the summer, which is hard to believe right now, but we'll see. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for another video very soon. Take care.